Welcome back to the Sapphic Gaze podcast. I'm your host, Nisa, and as always, my co-host, Ellie, is with me. We are here to talk friends to lovers trope.
We are indeed. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite tropes. I say that, but all of them are my favorite tropes.
Anything Sapphic, you're like, I am here for it.
Oh yeah, definitely. If it's gay, I'm here to play. I don't know.
That's another merch idea. I am here for it.
No, let's not do that. We'll workshop stuff later.
Okay, fine, fair enough.
Okay. But I mean, as far as like friends to lovers, I hate to play into like lesbian stereotypes, but I feel like that's one that everybody can kind of relate to, just because who among us has not had a little bit of a crush on at least one of our friends at some point in their lives?
Yeah, not many, I don't think. I definitely did. And I only recently told my friend about it.
Oh no, really?
It was really great. We met up after we hadn't spoken in, I want to say maybe 4 years, just because life happens and you drift apart. And we were best friends for a long time. And it was going really well. We were having a really good catch up. And then we got onto the subject of dating. And I was like, did you know I had a huge crush on you? And she was like, what? I was like, no, yeah, I was fully convinced I was in love with her.
Yeah.
It was a really nice catch up. And she thought it was hilarious. So yeah, friends to lovers, I can relate for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to like out her, so I won't get too specific, but my first girlfriend was actually my best friend. Like, it was one of those where I had told her, and then all of a sudden we were just dating. So that was pretty cool, you know? Friends to lovers trope worked out for me. I mean, as an aside, unfortunately, she did later cheat on me. So that was unfortunate. But, you know, for a little bit there, I was living the lesbian dream.
Yeah, no, that was unfortunate for her, not for you. She missed out big time.
Exactly. Look, I have a podcast of my own now.
Look at me, Mom. I have a podcast.
Yeah. Oh, God. But yeah, I mean, friends to lovers, I feel like it's universally one of those where everybody can understand, at least minimum, having a crush on a friend and then kind of hoping like that something builds from there. But I feel like it really works on top of that because, like, usually the chemistry and compatibility is already so strong. So you have a good foundation to build on your characters from there. And then, like, as long as you, stick the landing on the transition from friends to lovers, like, it's really hard to write a poor friends to lovers. But it's possible.
Yes, I have definitely read 1 or 2 bad friends to lovers books.
Oh, good lord. I mean, what like themes, I guess, or what for you would make a bad friends to lovers story?
I'm trying to generalize as opposed to going into depth about one that didn't work specifically.
Yeah.
That I'll go into in a bit. But I think generally, if it's perhaps too rushed, if the transition from friends to lovers is too abrupt, I think that never works well because you need to give them time to, transition into that romantic arena.
Additionally, sometimes I've seen some where it kind of gets a little incel-y, where the friend gets bitter because the feelings aren't reciprocated like right away. And so I've seen some of that, or like possessiveness of their friend, and kind of gets a little on the edge there for me.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to slip into, and I don't think necessarily authors always realize when they're doing it.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that does come from like personal experience, like how you viewed those friendships where you did catch feelings, like if you're bitter about it, or if it's one of those where you're like, you know what, that was probably for the best that didn't happen.
Yeah, I really wish I paid better attention to the dedications, because I would love the idea of a friends to lovers, but it's like dedicated to my ex-best friend, look what you missed out on.
I don't know. That would be awful I don't know if you put that as the dedication, especially if it said ex-best friend. That's catty.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely do that though. I'm not gonna lie.
You're like, my salty ass would put to my ex-best friend who broke my heart.
Yeah. Oh god, if I wasn't on such good terms with my friend that I had a crush on, perhaps I would.
Okay, but getting away from angriness or poor friends to lovers. What are your favorite friends to lovers stories?
I have three that I think worked really well, and one that I think did not.
Okay, let's hear them.
For my three that worked really well, Wrong Number, Right Woman by Jay.
I enjoyed that one as well, especially like the whole going from text to actual real friendship.
Yeah, I think it's a really solid one within the Sapphic community. I feel like it's cherished widely, and loads of reviews I've read absolutely adore their dynamics.
Yeah, Denny and Eliza are super cute, especially when Eliza starts to realize she's catching feels.
Yeah, I love it. My other one is, oh, I only have two actually. So it's Wrong Number, Right Woman and On the Same Page.
I was gonna say, if you didn't have On the Same Page, I'm pretty sure the Sapphics would riot. That is on my list as well.
Again, I think it's a staple of friends to lovers.
100%. And I mean, it's like, honestly, probably one of the best examples for me on friends to lovers.
I will admit I haven't read their epilogue novella, the second book in their story yet.
Yeah, the next chapters.
I haven't read that yet. It is on my TBR, but I need to actually work my way through my TBR.
You really need to read it. It is so fucking adorable. Like I couldn't even with it. It was
I do remember you telling me that there was, I don't know if it's a spoiler because I don't know if it says it in the bio, but I think you said there's like an obscene amount of children.
yes. Yeah. Gianna wasn't kidding at the end of On the Same Page when she said that she wanted to have Riley's babies. Like she's just cranking them out.
I'm here for it. I do really want to read about their next stage.
It's so adorable. Like even let's rewind all the way back to how they start, like where they had like a tentative friendship because they were roommates, and then they had that fight and they don't really talk, and Gianna has to do all that introspection and really question who are her friends. And then she has that whole arc where she goes like to stereotypical mean girl to like the best person you've ever met and is super successful, but underneath it all is still super vulnerable and is still that kid looking for validation from her parents. And I mean, Gianna is a character I kind of love.
Yeah, she is a great, I think she has a lot of depth to her.
Yes. And after all of that, in the next chapters, you get a little bit of vindication because Riley kind of sticks it to Gianna's mom. She goes off on her.
Yeah, the protective trope, I am here for it.
Exactly. She gets really protective when Gianna's mom shows up looking for Gianna because as they are having more and more children, Gianna wants to step away from her influencer empire and focus more on her clothing line and everything. And so Gianna's mom, since it has to do with money now, shows up and Riley just goes off. And I love it. I'm here for it. I think they have a perfect friends to lovers just because they do struggle at first to really understand each other. And then once they hit their stride, they are there for each other. They communicate. They put their friendship above everything else. And there's no forcing of the feelings. Because, as you remember from the book, Gianna catches feelings first and realizes it. But at no point in time is she like, hey, maybe I should broach this. Like, she wanted to keep the friendship, and that was paramount. That was number one on her priorities. And you see it, too, when Riley starts catching feelings where she doesn't know if she should even bring it up to Gianna because, again, she doesn't want to destroy the friendship. So I think that's really why that transition from friends to lovers is effective.
Yeah, because above all else, they prioritize each other and their relationship with each other, as opposed to maybe wanting to jeopardize what they have already.
Exactly. And I think that's really cute. Kind of the other side of the spectrum of that, though, I think is one of my favorites is Always Alex by Robin Alexander, who does really great friends to lovers, and it's just hilarious.
Yeah, whenever I need a comedic book, I'm straight to Robin Alexander.
Oh, yeah, she's got great comedic timing and knows how to really bring that to writing. Because I feel like timing in comedy is one of those that usually you think about in like stand-up or movies, and it's hard to accomplish, I feel like, in a book. But she really does a great job. But yeah, Always Alex, so kind of at a different spectrum. So, like, on theirs, as you know, Alex and Dana stop being friends after Alex goes away to college and then Dana leaves town trying to find her place and get away from her dad a little bit. I think kind of one of the things that makes them interesting, and it's not always something that is effective in writing, is the gap between when they were kids trying to find their own way in the world and then when they come back as adults. Because I think it's really one thing that I've noticed, and it'll come up in my least favorites, is that when you meet that young, you're not really your own person. You're not really formed. And so taking that break in between being a kid and being an adult, they had enough time to grow as their own people separate from each other. And so when they come back together, now that they know what they want out of life, now that they are the people that they are supposed to be, they're able to function better in a relationship. And I thought that worked really well. So thinking about like always Alex, that does lead me into my least favorites because they didn't utilize it from the start, the gap between being teenagers and being adults. So the two I have as my least favorite would be Make the Season Bright by Ashley Herring Blake with Charlotte and Brighton. And then along the same lines, Dear Ripley by Jacqueline Ramsden with Alicia and Ripley. Both of those, they were friends as teenagers. And instead of getting that time apart and growing as like their own entity, in both of them, they got married super young and then subsequently divorced. I think the problem with both of those, as evidenced by the divorce, is that because they didn't know what they wanted out of their lives separately, I think they just took for granted that their relationship was the thing that they wanted, and they focused on that first rather than looking at yourself and looking at the person you're with and saying, what do we want out of life as a big picture? And so I think that was kind of the big issue with those. And you say, well, that's not really fair because part of the narrative was that they got divorced. So we're trying to just look at the back end when they get back together. But I think the problem was in both of those, neither couple had really grown other than saying, well, I want to be with this person. So for Dear Ripley, I mean, that's really what brought them back together is they were like, oh, well, we made a mistake getting divorced in the first place. We should have just talked. And that's great. But ultimately, their goals didn't really shift. They still wanted the same things. And that was the problem in Make the Season Bright, too, is now that they're separate, in Make the Season Bright, Charlotte and Brighton live in two different places. They have two very different goals out of their careers, and they weren't able to really find a way cohesively that those goals out of life actually became shared goal. Like, they still very much have different goals out of life. And so I don't think them getting back together, other than saying, oh, well, we still have feelings, was very effective.
Yeah, with Dear Ripley, if I remember correctly, it definitely felt like they settled. Because I remember they were slightly older characters, and it kind of felt like they were being pressured into rekindling their romance by their friends, their mutual friends. And it kind of just felt like they were almost at a point where they were thinking, we're at this stage in life, maybe we were a bit rash, maybe we should try again. And I think that's the extent to which the thought went into that decision to get back together.
Exactly. It felt like the proximity is what brought them back together. Because you say, well, if Ripley didn't come back to town, or very similarly, in Make the Season Bright, they both end up on the same holiday vacation. And so forced proximity, it's one of those where the forced proximity seems to be what brings them back together. They didn't have like another thought like, hey, maybe I should go back and try and rekindle this because I've realized I made a mistake. It was just, now that we're back together, hey, the spark is still here, but the problems haven't gone away.
It's interesting you say that because the one that did not work for me was also forced proximity. So the one that didn't work for me was Meeting Millie.
I have not read that. I've heard about it.
I think it's the first book in the Oxford series. And their forced proximity comes from the fact that one of them lives in Oxford and one of them has just moved back to Oxford. They both studied law, I believe, at Oxford University, and one of them left and has since come back. And they were best friends at university. and one of them developed feelings for the other. And so she left and then she's come back. The reason it didn't work for me was so Charlotte comes back to Oxford for a job and rekindles her friendship with Millie. And the reason that their friendship broke apart was because essentially, and this isn't spoilers, it happens early on in the book, but Charlotte developed feelings for Millie and those feelings weren't reciprocated. So their friendship broke down and then Charlotte comes back. And then all of a sudden, it's like Millie's pining over Charlotte.
Oh, that's weird.
But the way it came across to me in the book was, if I can't have you, no one else can.
Ooh, so that possessiveness that we were talking about then.
Yeah, because Charlotte starts to get close with another character in the book called Olivia. And when Charlotte starts paying attention to Olivia and sort of sidelining Millie a bit, Millie's like, oh no, wait, come back. If it's gonna mean losing you, then fine, I'll be with you, I'll fall in love with you, we can be together.
Ew, really?
That's my take on it. That's how it came across.
That's kind of gross. And gonna juxtapose that with On the Same Page, since we were saying that was one of the better ones, is very, very opposite of what had happened with Gianna and Riley. Because Gianna sat there and watched as Riley dated person after person and never got really jealous or possessive.
Yeah, I mean, with meeting Millie, I feel like they did build their friendship back up after Charlotte came back to town. So they did become friends again and they did start to rebuild their friendship. Millie kind of only had that realization, I think, once she felt lonely and then she saw that Charlotte was starting to become friends with Olivia. And I just think if you then realise you're in love with someone because they are showing interest in someone else, I don't think that's a very good foundation for a romance.
No, definitely not. And I wanted to rewind. You had said Charlotte was the one who confessed feelings to Millie.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure if I remember, I read this ages ago, but I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, they were between 18 and 21. And they were at a house party and Charlotte had these feelings for Millie. And then Charlotte walked in on Millie kissing another girl.
Oh, okay.
And Charlotte was kind of like, what about me? Like, I've been here this whole time. I'm so into you. Why can't we be together? And Millie was like, I don't like you that way.
Ouch.
Yeah, so they didn't speak again and their friendship was irreparably damaged. And Charlotte moved away. And then since coming back, they sort of picked up where they left off and had to rebuild their friendship. But then again, it's kind of like Millie only now likes Charlotte now that Charlotte is no longer interested.
I hate to say, I am catching incel vibes from the early description that you were saying, because it sounds like Charlotte wasn't dating anybody, holding out, hoping that Millie would, and then when she found out Millie didn't reciprocate those feelings, she kind of blew up a little bit.
Yeah, and Millie is sort of shown to be this really fun-loving, happy-go-lucky kind of character, and she's really bubbly, everybody loves her, whereas Charlotte is the more sort of shy and introverted character. And then as soon as Charlotte starts to come out of her shell a little bit and show interest in making friends outside of Millie and perhaps dating this Olivia character, Millie's like, oh no, what did I do all those years ago? Suddenly I've realised I have feelings.
I've seen that used a lot in books before and even movies, but I really hate that. Every time I see it, where it's one of those where I didn't realize I had feelings until you started dating someone else. Because I feel like if you can't acknowledge and understand your feelings, like having somebody almost prove to you that you did, like exterior to you and your friend, that's really unhealthy. And it kind of makes me question, are you just afraid that you're going to lose your friend? Or do you actually have feelings? Because friendships, evolve if you let them, so that it includes more people in each of your lives. And so it's one of those where I wonder, are you just clutching to the friendship, afraid of change, or do you actually have feelings?
Yeah, for sure. And I think I would have had more respect for the book had Charlotte have said, you had your chance to be with me. I'm no longer interested in you that way, but I want to remain friends, but I don't want to date you romantically. I think that could have been a much more powerful book than having them fall into this overly romantic, sort of Hollywood version of a romance story.
Well, and then I gotta ask, because I feel like that would come down to the execution of it all. Because if they would have done that, would you have questioned whether or not Charlotte did it just like as revenge against Millie? Like, you rejected me all those years ago, now I'm gonna reject you?
I don't think so. I think because it's 10 years later. So they are now in their probably early 30s, late 20s, it's around there. And I think had the author of sort of come at it from a stance of Charlotte's now older, more mature, and she now has other dating prospects, such as Olivia, and she doesn't want to revert into old habits of maybe having that unrequited feelings, I think I would have understood that more.
Yeah, I guess I can see that.
If I, was in love with my best friend and she broke my heart, and then 10 years later she's like, oh, you know what, actually, let's try and let's be girlfriends, I think I'd be a little bit salty.
I was going to say I would be salty as hell.
Yeah, I'd be like, we've just wasted 10 whole years. We could have been together all this time and had a happy life, and now all of a sudden you've decided that you want me. Like, no, forget that. I'm over it.
I mean, and the only thing that I could say on that note is that 10 years is a huge amount of time, and you change so much in 10 years. So it might be true that, like, I didn't love you in that way, how you were 10 years ago, but now that you've gone through all these different events that have formed you into who you are now, I love this version of you. I could see that working.
I mean, as an aside, I know this is another topic we're discussing on another episode, but our Built to Last episode, the ones that I say are built to last are ones where they have perhaps been together in early years, broken up, gone and worked on themselves outside of their relationships, and come back together.
Yeah, I think quite a few of mine also have that as well. And I think it's just about that growth.
Mm-hmm. I just don't feel like Millie actually grew as a person. I think she was still very much that fun-loving, bubbly, not taken seriously character. Whereas I think Charlotte left and matured and came back. And I don't know, I think I would have preferred the book had they've actually stayed friends.
Yeah. Is she giving off, like, pick-me energy?
Yeah, I mean, she's popular and she knows she's popular. But then again, I feel like I'm probably misinterpreting this. I'm definitely in the minority here because it has rave reviews on Goodreads, and from the friends I have on Goodreads and seeing their reviews, it's a really popular book. And everybody says it's a great second chance friends to lovers romance. And so I'm definitely in the minority in my interpretation.
I mean, I haven't read it, obviously. Maybe I should.
I think you would hate it.
I mean, just from what you've described, and then obviously having a second chance romance friends to lovers is one of my favorites, I feel like my barometer probably is pretty high for a rewarding friends to lovers story when they have that separation. Because even the ones that I thought were less effective don't seem, from what you've described, as bad as Meeting Millie.
I wouldn't say it's a bad book because the writing is amazing and it's a really well-known author and they have a huge fan base, and it's because their writing is solid. I just think that the execution for me wasn't great in this example.
And I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, and I think knowing your taste in Sapphic books, I would not recommend this book to you.
I mean, we don't always agree, so.
No, we don't. But I feel like the last book I recommended you nearly ended our friendship.
Are you talking about Bloomtown?
I am indeed.
Almost. Very close.
In my defense, I recommended that to you early on because I loved the first half. Well, the first quarter.
We have since learned.
We have. But I was like, Nisa, you got to jump on this hype. You need to read Bloomtown. And then I got halfway and I was like, oh no, tell me you have not started it. Tell me this is reversible.
It wasn't.
No.
Maybe I'll check out Meeting Millie. I don't know. If it follows that second chance where neither character has grown enough, or even just one hasn't grown enough, then yeah, there's a good chance that I might not buy into the romance. Because I feel like the execution is what it's all about for me.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you don't like the central romance, it makes a romance book really hard to like.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to read the second book in the series focuses on Olivia, so the character that had a crush on Charlotte, and it focuses on Olivia meeting someone else.
I mean, based on what you've told me, that sounds like that ended really great for Olivia because, nobody wants to be that third wheel to all that drama with Millie and Charlotte.
Yeah, and I think because they were all friends at university, well, Charlotte was friends with Olivia, and Olivia hated Millie because Millie was best friends with Charlotte. It was a whole love triangle, but friendship triangle.
Is that a friendship triangle?
Well, I feel like if two of your friends don't like each other, it's tricky.
Well, I was going to say, that just sounds like you said, a love triangle. Olivia likes Charlotte. Charlotte likes Millie. Well, no, because Millie doesn't reciprocate to Charlotte at first, but then she also doesn't like Olivia. So I guess it's not, it's like an arrow.
Yeah, it's like a
A
point.
love arrow.
A love arrow. Wow.
I mean, if we're going math, it's a vector.
Wow. Tell me you work in STEM without telling me you work in STEM.
You know what? I don't need this judgment. I'm allowed to talk about math and vectors anytime that I want.
You can use your degree anytime you like. But yeah, meeting Millie
goodness.
was not the one for me.
It sounds like it.
I really wanted to love it because, like I said, it had good reviews and the people I follow on Goodreads had left glowing recommendations for it. So I was excited to read it. And then after the whole Charlotte walking in on Millie kissing another girl thing, I was just like, okay. I'm not saying you have to reciprocate feelings when they're aimed at you. I'm not saying that Millie had to like Charlotte, but for me, the timing was very sus.
Yeah, I guess my question is, since one of the things that we said really worked with the couples that we liked who made that transition from friends to lovers, communication was solid with Denny and Eliza, Alex and Dana. Eventually it got solid when they came back together. And then obviously Gianna and Riley were very solid in their communication. How was the communication in meeting Millie?
I'm going to say a hard pass with communication with Gianna and what's her name?
What? Riley? Are you kidding me?
Let me tell you why. She accidentally gave her the wrong present and accidentally made her believe that she wanted to have sex with her. Poor communication right there.
Aside from that, but even in that situation, how do you communicate with your friend when you think that your friend gave you a sex toy and is offering to have sex with you?
You say like, hey, Gianna, what's with the, was it lingerie she gave her?
No, I think she actually gave her like fuzzy handcuffs and a strap on, right?
Yeah, so you go, hey, Gianna, what's with the strap? Like, are we doing this or what's going on here?
Yeah, but okay, I see what you're saying, but if you think about too how Riley is within the confines of the story, like she didn't even know necessarily if she enjoyed sex all that much because it seemed like she was really uncomfortable with sex, like anytime it came up. And that was one of the things that she really admired about Gianna, is that Gianna was so open about sex, sexuality, and everything in that arena. So, like, had this happened where Riley had accidentally given it to Gianna, I think Gianna would have been like, hey, wait, what's going on? I think it's almost like part of Riley's character that she's not comfortable talking about sex.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I was just playing devil's advocate. I too would not be comfortable being like, what is this?
Yeah, I don't know. If it were me, I probably would have done something stupid like take a picture of it and text and be like, what the fuck? Like, I wouldn't actually broach it in like, let's sit down and talk about this before we do it. Mine would have just been like, let's make a joke of this and hope that I don't ruin my friendship.
Oh no, yeah, I fully would have maybe just like walked into their room one day with the handcuffs and been like, are you free now? Are you ready to talk about this?
No. Oh no. God. But I mean, outside of that situation, which I know it's hard to go outside of that situation because that is what kind of kicked off their friendship rolling into the relationship side of it. Their communication is really good. Like they talk several times a day, and then like Gianna really talks to Riley about her parents and really opens up. And once they get into a relationship, the communication is pretty solid coming from Gianna's side, but not really from Riley's. So I guess I could see part of that because she didn't even really confess her feelings to Gianna. It was because she said it on air that they had to broach that topic. Fine, fine. I will relent. You are correct. Their communication could use a little work.
Thank you.
Are you happy with yourself now?
I'm ecstatic.
You've broken my spirit, and I have relented.
Wow, it only took 43 minutes.
Fuck off. Oh, no. But okay, afterwards though, and outside of like their relationship, no, because that's where the communication is important. Inside the
Mhm.
relationship, I can't make the argument. I resent it though. I begrudgingly agree, but I resent you.
This is payback for the age gap episode.
You know what? Fine. Fine. That's fair.
Thank you.
That's fair. But I'm still upset about it. I'm going to be a petulant child now.
I take it back. Their communication was top tier. Everybody needs to take a lesson from them.
Nope. Nope. You can't take it back now. There's going to be a campaign, and we're just going to rally around hating on you for opening our eyes to this. Oh, yeah. Okay, fine. So, communication, not the greatest. I'm trying to think how the communication was between Alex and Dana. I know with Eliza and Denny, communication was pretty solid,
Yeah, and I do think Jay typically does do mature characters very, very well.
which is something I appreciate.
I'm struggling to think of an example of one of Jay's books where a character acted either out of character or unrealistically. I can't remember reading one of Jay's books and wanting to scream at a character for acting a certain way.
I can't recall anything either. Maybe then I need to rethink my criteria for what makes a good friends to lovers, because now that you've brought that up, I'm starting to rethink Alex and Dana too, because I don't think they had solid communication. Because Alex was in love with Dana in high school and didn't say anything. And like spoilers for this, but towards the end we find out that Dana she has 2020 though, hindsight is 2020. Dana realizes that she also had feelings for Alex. But I think that has something to do with comp pet, which I bring this up in the comp pet episode as one of the depictions of comp pet. So
I feel like I've just broken you.
you did break my brain, and it's a little bit early in our recording for the day to have broken it. I might have to rethink, because they didn't have great communication. I'll have to recalibrate that.
But who does? Give me one example of a sapphic romance that had excellent communication that was unparalleled.
I mean, you did say wrong number, right woman.
Mm-hmm.
They had really great communication. Like, that was the paramount of it. Well, no, I take that back, because Denny wasn't really communicating everything to Eliza, because I don't remember Eliza's best friend's name. Even had to say, I think you're going to have to move this along because Denny is too respectful to move this along if you want more than just friendship.
Yeah, and from what I remember, Denny spoke a lot to her sister about her feelings for Eliza,
Yes.
as opposed to speaking to Eliza herself.
And I mean, it's one of those where, again, you gotta straddle that line, because if you think about it, even in real life, I hate to say, but there are some times where people will find out that you're lesbian or that you're bisexual, and they'll be like, oh, does that mean you fancy me? And I think Denny was being very cognizant of that and wanting to make sure that Eliza knew that it wasn't one of those where she's only in it for the potential for something more. She valued their friendship.
Denny was just too pure. Denny was just such a sweetheart.
God, I really did love Denny. She was chivalrous as hell.
I loved everything about her as a character.
Yeah, because she was so shy and, nervous, but then also really had big feelings, but she didn't want to, like, force that onto anybody. It was cute.
I have to say, I think I'm developing a soft spot for the butch softies of the Sapphic community. Denny and Rowan from Flipping Hearts and Homes by Chris Sett. They're both butch presenting women, but have real big feelings, big emotions, a huge soft side. And I love when butch or masc characters don't play into the stereotypes of what society sort of expects from them.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy that as well. But, I mean, you could almost, like, snip this and put it into the masculine representation of the question of why is it that butch women are presented as those kind of toxic masculine characters a lot.
I don't agree with this playing into the stereotypes to the detriment of a community. I mean, I know you spoke in depth about it in the Mask episode, but I just think some stereotypes are so harmful, and some authors don't necessarily understand the damage it can do when you play into those stereotypes.
This is true. This is
Mhm.
definitely true. I definitely agree with that. And I wish we would see softer butches.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just as guilty of it. Like, in my book, I wrote perhaps stereotypical elements of characters. So, like, my protective character, as you well know, having read it like 8 times, plays into some of the more masculine energy stereotypes, i.e., she goes to the gyms and trains a lot and this kind of thing. So, I get it, it's an easy thing to do.
This feels like Lou trash talk, and I won't accept it. So.
Okay, I take it back. I'm just saying, like, I'm not trying to bash authors for writing stereotypes because I understand that tropes and favourites are built predominantly on stereotypes sometimes. I have issues when they become harmful stereotypes.
Yeah, and it is really tough to see authors when they perpetuate those types of stereotypes. But anymore, I kind of wonder partially if sometimes they lean into it for marketability, which is its whole own discussion. We've gotten way off topic now. Okay, so things we don't like: being possessive,
Mm-hmm.
incel behavior, feeling like you're entitled to your best friend being in love with you because they're your best friend, not growing from being young and then coming back together,
Yeah, for sure.
and then only getting back together because of forced proximity.
Yeah, or like external pressures from like mutual friends or something.
All right. Well, thank you for listening into this episode of the Sapphic Gaze podcast. If you enjoyed this, give us a like and subscribe. Also, check out our socials on Instagram, TikTok, and we do have a Reddit community, so feel free to check us out there. All right, then, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.